In a world where everyone knows everything. Yeah, right. One dad stands below everyone and yells, "I know nothing."
Please welcome.
This is the Dad Who Knows Nothing podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to the Dad Who Knows Nothing podcast. Today, very excited to have Sara Alepin on the show with us. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And she is a rock star wedding photographer and a networking guru. And she's also a podcaster. So everybody knows how much I love having fellow podcast hosts on my podcast to talk about the stories and things that are going on. But we really wanted to focus today on networking. So she is the owner of District Bliss, which is a DC area networking support group to help people host events and create a space where entrepreneurs can skyrocket their business with ease. And that's what I wanted to talk about with you today for the most part, but always a good idea to have some fun wedding stories, maybe at the end, and anything else where this conversation may go. So Sara, so happy to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I love your show. It's so much fun. It's just a great show. And I love the name too.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I always like to start because I think it's always the easiest to start with individuals because you started out wedding photography. Was that where the story started? You started in wedding photography and then you went into networking. Tell me how you got into these two, which could be looked at as kind of niche businesses, but yeah, you do both.
Yes. So it's a little bit of a roundabout story. So I actually was a high school photography teacher. And I worked as a wedding photographer during the summer because teachers always have to have a summer job. And so I ended up getting attacked. I was attacked by a student coming in hot with kind of a crappy story. Sorry.
Wow, that's okay though. That's what reality brings us sometimes, right?
Yeah. And, you have to shift and continue living your life in a happy way. So I couldn't go back to teaching, but I had this business I had already established as a wedding photographer. So I was like, all right, well, great. I'll just do that. And so I ended up needing to bring on team because, with an injury, I couldn't fully support my wedding photography business without another photographer. So I started going to all these networking events, and it was a lot of where I would walk up, I would, engage with the circle of people who were talking to one another. And then they would say, "Oh, so what do you do?" And I would say, "I'm a photographer." And inevitably someone in the circle would say, "I am also a photographer," and then ice me out of the circle. But I was looking to hire photographers. So it was my target was not accepting me in the networking realm because they thought I was competition. And so I ended up deciding, you know what, if I can't find a space where I can make this happen for myself, I'm going to break the system. So I founded District Bliss, and we were very specific about the way that we brought people together in a supportive environment that really helps elevate the people around you. So we do it online and in person now. And that's kind of my origin story about how I started it. I kind of accidentally started a networking business.
No, I love that. You were having some barriers to getting in, so you just created your own and found the success for the type of people you wanted to be with. That's cool.
Yeah, it worked great.
So when you're talking about networking, I mean, I think when people think about networking, they think LinkedIn, right? That's the biggest networking site that you could probably think of. Before LinkedIn, it was kind of like maybe there were groups that were set up where you could go and meet with other insurance professionals, meet with other bankers, all these different groups that you could get with to network and build a support. How has that changed, do you think, from the pandemic now where virtually or most everything seems to be being done online? How have you seen that be successful?
That's a really good question. I think the place I always start with is networking is anxiety provoking for everyone. And part of it is kind of breaking that piece out because, when I say like, hey, do you want to come to our networking event? A lot of times people's faces look like I just said, hey, do you want to go sit in traffic with me? Like, of course I don't want to do that.
Right.
No. So I think during the pandemic, what kind of shifted for me is what I saw with my group is that instead of thinking about everything as being very hyper local, it opened up an international market for like a global networking opportunity. So if you're a person who works in marketing, you can work with somebody in Australia in marketing when you live in LA, or, in Canada or wherever. So it kind of eliminated a few of those things that we had traditionally thought were necessary in networking, for finding people in our immediate area. And of course, there are some businesses where you have to work with people in your immediate area, like if you're a criminal defense attorney or, maybe different types of insurance. I don't know the insurance field very well. Or, something, if it has to be in person, then, you might have a little bit more of that. But even within those those types of businesses that really have to work with someone that is local, they don't have to have their entire team be local. So you can actually find the people who are the right fit for your marketing needs, regardless of where they are in the world, because that doesn't matter where they're located. So it was really lovely to be able to see these people who had always assumed that networking was that in person, either going to the Chamber of Commerce, and the getting stuck talking to someone that you had nothing in common with, or a lot of those things. It kind of shifted away from feeling that stuff. So I think it actually, in a way, made it less anxiety provoking. And it's harder to justify not going to something when it is just at your computer.
Yeah, that's a good point. But how do you make it feel authentic and genuine when it's online and you're trying to network, right? Because you're trying to build a relationship. Is it difficult when there's others that are online? In my mind, I kind of see it as, people talking over each other. How does it work to make it feel authentic and genuine?
That's a really good question. And there are two things here. First of all, I always like to say every opportunity when you meet someone is a networking opportunity. Like this
Right.
conversation we're having right now is a networking opportunity.
Of course. Yep.
Even though we are not here for the express purpose of networking. But so it's like kind of starting with that mindset shift. And then what we do at our events is we have everyone come into the room. And it's really, a lot of it is the person at the helm. So I run all of our networking events, even though we have team. For me, it's really important. I like networking, because I like meeting people and I like learning about them. But for our events, what we do is we bring everybody in, and then I set up the expectation. So we each get 45 seconds to introduce ourselves, which is like your elevator pitch, like what you do. And then I have them drop their links in the chat. So we send those out afterwards so people can connect that didn't get to meet those people. And then we pop into breakout rooms. So then you're just with one or two other people right off the bat. And you get 3 prompts that help you kind of like not silly icebreaker ones. I had a real problem with that as a teacher. I hated those icebreaker things. So they're, specific, like something that happened, something you did that was really successful, something you're working on or kind of struggling with. And then usually there's a prompt that's like your favorite cocktail hour trivia item or something, little known fact kind of thing. People love to share those things they learn on like social media or like TikTok or whatever. They think it's like the most fun and they're always really excited about it. So it kind of, so breaking down some of that anxiety by like not allowing the space for people to be talking over one another, and having it be structured in a way that feels like a real conversation. And then I always like to say, best practices in networking, like ask questions of that other person. So as much as, you're sharing the things that I told you to share, ask questions, ask like, oh, so you're launching this course. Well, what is the course about? And then it helps you really have like a deeper conversation so that you feel like you're actually building a connection, because that's what networking is. You're building a connection, not, having to have a forced conversation.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like this for networking, like it is for a lot of relationships, right? You get out of it what you put into it. And so if your goal is going to these networking events to say, well, I want to meet 5 people so they can help me with my issue, as opposed to saying, well, I hope to meet some people that may be dealing with some same things, and hopefully maybe we can help each other by working together. So that mindset's probably much more successful if you go into a networking event thinking that way.
Oh, yeah, totally. Thinking of it as like a collaborative experience and a generous experience. And generosity doesn't mean you're giving away all of your expertise for nothing.
Right.
Generosity might be strategic generosity, where you're saying, oh, I have this really great resource. And then sharing that resource that maybe you have, that then you are building like trust. You're building that relationship, right? So like you're not like saying, here, let me teach you how to do this or do this for free. You're making sure that you're covering your nut too.
Yeah, great point. So why overall, let's we've kind of talked about it, tactically, some of the things that you're doing on the events that you hold. But let's go out a little bit more. Why is networking overall? Why is it so important? No matter how you do it, if you're doing it in person, if you're doing it virtual, why is it so important today to have a network, to try and grow your network, to constantly be looking to organically grow that and make it larger?
Yeah, that's also a great question. So when you're there's so many answers just popped into my brain. So networking, there's nothing that's going to replace face-to-face interaction. So whether that be virtually or in person, there's nothing that's you are always going to be the diehard fan of the business that you feel like you got personal attention from that person, the person at the helm or the person that was working with you. So there's nothing that builds like trust faster than getting to know people. And at the end of the day, there's honestly not a lot that's more fun than that in business, because you can do groupthink, you can problem solve together. Even if you're not converting a client from the experience, you're still you still have an opportunity for other ways to become a better business owner or a better, employee, depending on how you're actually networking. Because then this isn't specific to entrepreneurs, even though that's who I normally work with. But if you are, if you're actually like in a corporate environment, it's still good to network because, you may want to move jobs or find a new job or get a promotion or that kind of thing. And it truly is, in a lot of ways in this world, still who you know. In terms of getting a promotion, getting a new job, getting a referral for something, people being excited about what you're doing. There is no replacement for those things. That human element is always going to be super duper important. And so doing the networking thing means you're building the human relationships, the elements. We are social creatures, so we want to have those relationships. And then the other thing is, oh shoot, it just went right out of my brain. One of the best things that I've done actually for my photography business is network connecting people with others is really good client care. So I'm not the right photographer for everyone. I might be booked. Also, you spend a lot of time with me. So if you don't enjoy my energy, then you should find someone whose energy you enjoy, because otherwise you're going to not be really super happy on your wedding day, which is one of the days you should be really super happy in your life. Right. So, and it might show in pictures. So, I actually, Right. So if I'm not the right fit, and I know if I'm not the right fit, then I will refer you to another photographer who is the right fit. And having a list of people that I know who they are, I know their style, I can speak to their personality, I can speak to all of the things. That means that I know who's a really good fit. And when I've actually referred out to people, other photographers, I've had those clients come back and refer their friends to me. And even though they've been super happy with their photographer, because they felt like they were taken such good care of. So even if it isn't a person that is going to be your client, it's still very good client care to have that list of other people that take care of them.
Yeah. And I 2 points I want to hit on, and hopefully I can remember them and not have one. So the first one was, the point you made about entrepreneurs, and certainly networking for entrepreneurs, the example you just gave was a fantastic one. And I think sometimes, and certainly you experienced this when you tried to do the networking thing before, and you were kind of frozen out by others. There's a sense that most people or most entrepreneurs are hyper competitive, and they will see another entrepreneur as a threat. But the reality is that's probably a small percentage. I've met so many entrepreneurs that are so willing to help and lend a helping hand, to give you assistance. So networking between entrepreneurs is just a fantastic idea, and that's fantastic. On the other hand, is I've been in the corporate world for 20 plus years, and I can tell you and tell our listeners without a doubt that networking has benefited me in various ways, a lot of ways that I never thought would happen when I made that connection. But to your point, if you're looking at it as client care, I want to grow my network in case maybe I can refer business to you, or we can just be connected so that in case we're running into challenges. But just having that network, you never know that good time that you spent with one individual when you connected with them, 10 years down the road, that individual may have an opportunity that may come your way just because of that interaction that you've had.
Yeah. And your network never expires.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Funny story. I still have two. So I went to a golf tournament with two individuals from Canada. And to this day, that was probably 7-8 years ago. To this day, that was the only day that we ever were together. They're on LinkedIn with me. To this day, we still, every once in a while, we'll still reach out to each other and just see how things are going. And we don't interact at all. I mean, our paths don't come across, but that's just a great example because it doesn't expire. You always go back to that good experience that you had, and you think of that person in that light, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I so agree. That's totally exactly the way I feel about it. That story you just told, and who knows what could ever come out of that in the future? Maybe just casual friendship. Maybe like something crazy could happen. That's really awesome. Either way, it's never a missed opportunity or a lost opportunity to expand your network.
Yeah, so true. So I would imagine though, because there's this move to virtual, that there's probably a lot of virtual networking events that happen. You're probably not the only game in town. So how do you know which ones are worth attending? How can you kind of look at it, and maybe you get invites every once in a while. How could I look at that and say, that one I may want to go to, whereas this one, maybe not.
Yeah. It's so funny because like once you have a bad networking experience, it can be very discouraging. So like my story of how I started my business, it was discouraging. I was disappointed. I was frustrated. And I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So it is important to kind of screen through some of the events that are out there. And there are tons. There's so many that are like great opportunities for very business or industry specific events. So if, you are skincare or something, or maybe you're in graphic design, like they have graphic design meetups and that kind of thing. So you can always start there. I would start with identifying your goals. If your goal is to meet other people in the graphic design world for some reason, then that's great. Go to that graphic design event. If your goal is to meet someone who is going to be able to get your engagement up on your social media, then the graphic design event probably isn't the right fit for you. So kind of identify those goals and then actually read the description of the event and look at the imagery, look at the brand. Does it look professional? Does it look like something you'd want to attend? I'm a big gut check person. So if you are looking at an event and you're like, I don't think this is for me, there's a reason your gut is telling you that. So are you also a gut check person?
I am. I feel like sometimes it steered me wrong, but I'm still going to go with it for the most part because it's been right so often.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that happen. Like we're reading something, we're seeing imagery, we're seeing colors, we're seeing design elements. If it has like 19 fonts on it, it's probably not a professional event. But you might not be able to look at it and say, okay, there are 19 fonts here. This is not professional. But your gut is going to look at it and be like, something's off here.
Or just one font, Comic Sans. Oh, sorry. Comic Sans really gets a bad rap, and I don't understand it. But
and Papyrus too.
Papyrus. Yeah.
Oh, poor Comic Sans. Yeah, like if it seems like something that you would enjoy going to, that's the place that I would start. I'm also a big advocate of reaching out to the organizer. So if you're not sure if it's the right fit or if you're in the right place, you can reach out and actually connect with them. We're all real people. And this is a very important thing to remember about all things, including social media. It is always a real person behind everything that is happening. So, that means you can reach out and touch that person in a good way or a bad way. Just my little public service announcement for the day. But yeah, if you have questions, reach out, and if you have specific goals, not goals, but maybe like, and I don't want to say ethics, but if you have certain things that are really important to you, when you read that event description, you're going to get an idea if some of those things are important to the other person too, or the event host. And you'll definitely get an impression of that when you reach out to them. And by that, what I mean here, what I'm thinking of in my mind, because I'm not doing a great job of explaining this. So we at District Bliss are committed to accessibility. So on all of our event descriptions, it says we provide captions. If there's anything else that would be helpful for you, please reach out and let us know. Here's my email address. Because to me, everyone should feel like they have a place, and include it, accessibility is inclusivity. So if your priorities, are inclusivity, then you can always ask, like, if those things are possible or whatever. But it's, that your gut's going to tell you all that too.
No, that's a very nice example of something that would probably make someone feel a little bit more comfortable about attending one of your events because they know that it is inclusive, or you at least try to make it as inclusive as possible. All right. So
it's so important.
Yeah, it's so is. So that's at the event level. So now let's talk about screening or trying to make good choices when you're talking about the actual individual that you want to network with. How do you, what should you look for? I'm sure it has a lot of the preparation, knowing what you want, your goals would play a role in that. But how would if I go to one of your great networking events and I see someone from across the room, right? It's not like you're trying to make eyes at anyone, but what would you want to consider to look for someone to network with at one of these events?
Yeah. there are two ways you can go here. I can go here where I can either say these are the red flags. Actually, you know what? I'm going to flip this on you.
Okay.
So you're a podcaster. I'm sure people come to you all the time to pitch being on your show, right? I would imagine, because
Yep.
it's a great show. So people come, and there are two types of people who come to you. There's going to be the type that does this, and then there's going to be the type that is the person you want to network with. So they're the people that come in and they say, "Hi, I'm Sara Alepin. I own a networking organization and I like networking and I am an expert in networking, and all of this is all about me. And it has nothing to do with your listeners, who are the primary reason that you bring people on your show. And it has nothing to do with you as the podcast host. They aren't showing in that situation that they've listened to the show. They aren't showing that they have really any interest in your best interest. They just want to talk about themselves. And then I'm sure you get these, right? Like, have you gotten a bunch of these?
I have, yes.
Yeah. It's hard. And it's like, part of me always wants to like respond and be like, okay, but what do you have to offer for my people?
Sure. Yep.
But usually I just say it's not a good fit and move along. So then there's the person that reaches out and they're like, hey, I really love what you're doing over here at the Dad Who Knows Nothing. I think you have a really great voice. You are really engaging. You elevate other people. You ask great questions. You make the show fun. You're very inquisitive naturally. And I'd love to share networking tips with your audience if that's a good fit.
Yeah, I'm choosing option B.
Yeah. Yeah. So generally speaking, it's the same with networking, right? So it's like, you don't want to go and stand and listen to somebody talk about themselves. Nobody wants to listen to someone else talk about themselves for an extended period of time, ever, period. We just don't. Like, unless you are the most interesting person in the world and people have paid to come listen to you speak. Like that's the outlier situation. It's not the rule, so you want to go in and find people who actually have an interest in you. So generally speaking, you'll know right away when the person asks any sort of question about you, or shows any sort of like they care. And again, that's something you just naturally kind of know when someone does or doesn't. In my two examples of podcast guests, I'm sure you could tell which one cares and which one doesn't. And what's best for you, and has your best interest at heart. So look for those people. And if you're standing there listening to someone talk all about like, here's my elevator pitch and I offer this and I do this for my clients and I do this for people and I have these awards that I've received and that kind of stuff, gracefully exit the conversation and find someone who really cares about you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so I would imagine in order to be ready to do that, are there any tips that you can give someone to prepare? Because my assumption is if they've planned for the event, they find an event that doesn't make them feel funny in the pit of their stomach, they feel like it's going to be something that they can be successful at and find the type of networking opportunities they're looking for. And then now they have to kind of prepare for it. So what tips would you give someone to prepare for it, to make the most out of an event that they feel is going to be advantageous for them from a network perspective?
I think I know this is kind of a silly one, but practicing gracefully exiting a conversation is probably a really good place to start, because that can be one of the more anxiety provoking parts of networking. You feel like you're going to get stuck with someone. What are you going to do? Go to the bar, get another drink, or like excuse yourself to go to the bathroom and then like hide in the bathroom, or get your phone out and pretend someone's calling you. You don't want to run into any of those things. So preparing to gracefully exit a conversation, I think, is pretty important, and a good place to start, because I personally, I was raised in the way where I like can't be rude. It's really hard for me. It's against everything. And then I feel terrible about it later. So that would cause me anxiety to feel like I was not gracefully exiting a conversation. And some people are really good at it. It's one of the things I'm not that great at. So I've had to develop some techniques surrounding being a people pleaser, who was raised by a mom who was just like adamant about being polite all the time. So I think if you identify in that same way, definitely practice gracefully exiting, because even, if you're going and your goal is to meet someone in a specific business because you need a team member surrounding that specific piece or whatever the case may be, you're looking for a new job. So you're looking to find someone who works in the same industry or a similar industry that might be able to bring you on. Then in that case, you also don't want to be standing with the same person the entire time. So even if it's a great conversation, you need to gracefully exit it at some point. And sometimes you really hit it off with someone and you will want to spend the entire time with them. Pro tip on that, take them with you to meet other people. And one of the great ways of breaking the ice is then to introduce the person that's with you, so that you don't have to talk about yourself the whole time. It also makes people open up the circle really fast when you do that. That was one of my first strategies that was very helpful. If I found someone that as an extrovert, I would find an introvert who looked like they absolutely didn't want to be there. And I would introduce myself to that person. And then I would make that person my networking buddy for the night. And I would take them around. I would introduce them. It was a win-win for everybody. So I'm totally like going off the rails here with all of my excitement about networking. But I think that that's probably the best place to start for yourself, because inevitably you are going to have to terminate a conversation. And honestly, that was like, for me, that was the hardest part of networking.
So you mentioned techniques that you use. Can you give us one to gracefully exit a conversation?
God, all of the times that I failed epically at it just flew right into my brain. So usually I'll say something, I'll just be transparent and I'll say, well, I really enjoyed this conversation. This was so much fun. I'm looking forward to continuing to connect with you. I'm gonna hop over here and introduce myself to this person. And because that way I'm still being polite, but I'm obeying all of the pieces inside me that make me like need to be polite and also respectful. And oftentimes that person will come with me to the other group. Now, if you really need to get out of the conversation because it's a person you don't want to have a conversation with, then if that strategy, if you use my strategy and then that person follows you to the next group, and it makes me feel really bad that I'm admitting this, but sometimes the best thing to do is to say something nice about the person that you don't want to have a conversation with anymore, that you need to exit the conversation with, to the other person you have now met, so that those people will start talking. And then you can say, well, it's great meeting you both. I'm going to hop over here and introduce myself to this group. But thank you so much for including me in this conversation.
No, those are two good tips. I mean, it's people going into these networking scenarios and these networking events, they should know you don't want to compare it to speed dating, but it's kind of like that, where you don't want to dominate one person's attention the entire time. And so if you could find yourself on either side of one of these, trying to gracefully bow out, but just if any of my listeners are in this networking event, just take your 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes to have that chat. And then even if it's good, to your point, find an opportunity to go speak to someone else. And those are two good strategies for doing that.
Thanks.
All right. So we've been talking about networking. We could probably talk about this for another 2 hours or so, but we're going to make a graceful exit because I want to give some opportunities for you to tell me some of your best wedding photography stories. So we probably don't have time for all of them because that would probably take all the time. And your podcast, what's the name of the podcast that's with the wedding? The wedding dish,
wedding
right?
dish.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. So any of my listeners, we'll put this in the show notes. If you want to hear some great topics, great stories, I perused a few of them. It sounds incredibly entertaining, and I'll listen to a few in the next couple of days. But give me a good wedding photography story. Maybe something like a tip to avoid wedding disaster, because we know my listeners, we got a lot of parents. So maybe they think back to their own wedding. Maybe they have kids that are having weddings, or we'll be looking forward to that at some point. Hit us with a good story.
Okay. There was a lot that happened at this wedding, but that set this into motion. But what the big tip I have for you is whether you are planning a wedding or whether you are attending a wedding, because you don't want to be the person on either side of this.
Good. I like this already.
So if you're planning a wedding, think about the appetizers and drinks that you are serving and what level of disaster it could be if they are all over you or other people at your wedding. And the reason that I say that is I had a wedding years ago. Now oh my gosh, it was probably 9 years ago now. And lovely couple, they had a wonderful wedding day. They had a bunch of things that just like kept going wrong for the stint right before the ceremony. The groom got locked out of the ceremony room. So I'm standing up at the front of the, like where the altar is, and I'm waiting, and I'm like, the groom is not here. And then all of a sudden I saw his partner come around the corner with her dad, and I was like, oh my God, the groom is not here. And I knew where he was. I knew he was, because I had dropped him in that room, but the event coordinator accidentally locked the door. So anyway, as soon as the music cut, when I let her know quietly that he wasn't there and to give it a second because we had to find him, then she yelled, "What?" And they cut the music. Oh my God, it was awful. Anyway, the event coordinator was very embarrassed by this, understandably. So she, during the posed photos, sent out redheaded slut shots, which is, of course, a red shot, and chicken teriyaki. Both terrible things to spill on someone wearing white, which, of course, immediately happened. So one of the groomsmen spilled his shot down one side of the bride. One of her bridesmaids spilled her shot down the other side. And then while the groomsman was standing there apologizing, he dropped his chicken teriyaki piece down the back of her gown, and it bounced and rolled the entire way down the train.
Oh my goodness.
And this is like immediately following this ceremony disaster. It was terrible. Oh my gosh. I'm like turning red thinking about it. Luckily, shout wipes are magic. Tide pens, not the same. Shout wipes, way to go. I shout wiped her dress. I got it all out. You couldn't even tell. But you definitely don't want to be the person who was on either side of that situation.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that could have ruined that day for sure.
And it was tough because it was already stressful. And then, of course, that meant that everything ran 30 minutes late minimum from that moment on, because I can't take the posed photos while I'm shout wiping a dress. So yeah, I would recommend leave your red wine at the table when you go over to hug someone who has just gotten married. You don't want to spill it could be a gray suit. You don't want to spill on that either.
Right. No, great tip.
And I wouldn't recommend chicken teriyaki as
probably
it's very
not
sticky.
Yeah. So the memory that I have from my wedding is we came through, we got introduced at the reception hall, and we came to our table. I can't remember if we were going to do the first dance or if we were going to sit down and eat first. I can't remember. But we looked over and we saw that which was probably the biggest wedding cake I'd ever seen in my life, other than pictures. And we looked over and the wedding cake's like this. And it literally looks like it's about to fall. And so we quickly adjusted and we're like, all right, let's cut the wedding cake. And so we quickly, went over and we cut the wedding cake, and we at least took off the top 2 tiers, the things that were causing it to lean, so that it didn't fall over. So that was a crisis averted on that day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, great example of what to do. Adjust. Like,
right.
You can't do anything about it. So just adjust.
Right.
And like make peace with the fact that it's going to be a little different, but it'll still be great.
Yeah. No, that's some great tips. And as a father of 3 daughters, 2 of which are one's 20, one's 16. So maybe I'll have to keep these tips in mind sometime in the future.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Well, that was really the inspiration for the title of the podcast, because depending on which one of the 3 I'm talking to, it has a direct relation on how much I know at that point. So there it goes.
Oh my God, I love it.
Well, Sara, this was awesome. This was a great conversation. I had so much fun. So her name is Sara, and it's Alepin.
Yes, but it's fine.
So you let me get away with slaughtering it earlier, and so I appreciate that. So Sara, thank you so much for talking to me about networking, giving me a good story from your wedding photography work that you do as well. There's 2 podcasts that you host. Not only do you host The Wedding Dish, but you also are a co-host of Laughing with Gingers. So tell us what that is.
So it's a comedy podcast. We play a lot of games. It's a lot of like fact sharing. Christina, my co-host, likes to do a lot of history. So we choose a topic each week, and then one of us, usually I, will invent a game to play. And she will do a deep dive into some sort of history related to the topic. And we also share a lot of our redheaded experiences, because when the sun is just really trying to kill you, there are some shared experiences.
Got it. So I think it's safe to say, Sara, that you stay pretty busy. So you got District Bliss, a networking organization that you're working hard to help give entrepreneurs space to meet other entrepreneurs and just networking to grow. And then you have your wedding photography, and that's called Photos from the Hardy.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a great name.
Thank you. My maiden name is Hartenstein. So when you butchered, and I'm using air quotes here, Alepin, it's nothing like what I used to get with Hartenstein.
I love that. Photos from the Hardy. That's great. And then you have the 2 podcasts, The Wedding Dish and co-host of Laughing with Ginger. So we'll put all that in the show notes. I'll certainly connect with you on LinkedIn, because networking, LinkedIn, they're almost synonymous, right? So I had such a great time talking with you. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time, Sara.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. And if you ever want to come on The Wedding Dish and talk about your wedding, I'm all ears.
There you go. Maybe me and my wife will both come on. She may remember some things differently. All right.
I love it.
Thanks, Sara.
Thank you for joining us on our journey to learn about various topics. If you'd like to get in touch with the Dad Who Knows Nothing, connect with him at the Dad Who Knows Nothing on TikTok and Instagram, or Dad Knows Zero on Twitter. If you have a moment and you like this episode, drop us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a great day and enjoy your journey through this game called life.